So we're with our first guest, Nasty, who you've probably seen on the channel before, and we've got a new series called Eject, where the guest shares their story about an ejection story. So basically, can you tell us what happened in your F-14 incident?
Yeah, sure, Mike, and it's great to be here again. I just enjoy what you're posting online and all the aviation stuff. It makes me all excited. So I'm excited to talk to your audience about, one of those times in your career that you kind of remember the day. And what's cool is, in our briefing, before we go flying every time, we talk about the fact that with a two-place airplane, we're going to say on the radio, eject, 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 and then we say, and I'm going to race you to the handle. And so, by the time you get done with that third word, you're out of the airplane. That's the idea. And so there's a little bit of a cliche with the title of your series. And so my ejection story, and I have a tie from Martin Baker, and the whole thing for, riding that Martin Baker seat successfully. And I'll tell folks a joke, and I share this in different places, that if you're flying Pratt and Whitney, which are the engines on the F-14A, you'd better be sitting on Martin Baker. And so the Martin Baker guys love that. The Pratt and Whitney guys don't love that. But in the case of my ejection in August of 1987, the performance of the engines was a key factor. And so we were out August. I was a lieutenant instructor in VF 124. The F-14 rag. I had already had over 1,000 hours in the Tomcat, and I was now back after my first at-sea tour 3 years after learning how to fly the Tomcat, and I was teaching people how to fly the Tomcat in VF 124. So I was a pilot instructor, and I was also a landing signal officer, and so I would take people to the ship too. So this particular hop, we called a flip-flop hop. And what we would do is, and the reason it's called a flip-flop is you'd go out on one flight and you would demonstrate to student pilots before they got into air combat maneuvering tactics phase how the Tomcat performs under high G and the edges of the envelope when you're trying to max perform the airplane. And then you would fly home, switch seats, pump the airplane back up and go back out, hence flip-flop.
Oh, yeah.
And then the instructor pilot would ride in the back seat with the student pilot in the front seat and coach the student pilot through the maneuvers. And usually a fairly terrifying hop, sitting in the back, and you're flying the airplane to the edges of the envelope, and so you're back there, and all you can do is narrate because your listeners will remember there's no controls in the back of the Tomcat. But in this case, I was the one that provided the entertainment because I was in the front seat flying when we did eject. And so what we would do is go out and we demonstrate how to turn the Tomcat. And so when you're flying a tactical airplane to the edges of the envelope, you learn to feel the cues of the airplane. You can hear as the airplane sort of descends into high G, you can hear the airflow now coming by the cockpit a lot more than over the wings. And so you hear kind of this whoa, kind of like that. You can also feel some what we call tactical buffet. And so, and then the G. And so you want to max perform the airplane in the Tomcat, 6.5 positive Gs, about 30 degrees nose down, and you're pulling on the airplane at what's called corner airspeed, which was about 320 knots. And you feel the buffeting in the airplane. So when it's right there, there's a little buzz right at the edge of that point. And so you're teaching the pilots to do things like that. That was a big piece of the hop. The other big piece of the hop and the foreshadowing into what happened was these 3 vertical recoveries. And so the Tomcat, a very long airplane, and it has some interesting coupling moments. So it was a hydraulic airplane. There's no computers in it. You put the stick in, it gives a hydraulic input to the flight controls, which were very big. So the airplane was you'll remember, 64 feet long, and the tails on that were the size of an A4 wing. So the horizontal tail, so lots of big surface, horizontal tails for pitch and roll. And of course, the vertical tails are very big. And so the airplane was big, and when it went out of control, it tended to be pretty violent because you were at the very end of that moment arm, that, center of gravity, center of pressure. So you're out in front of that thing getting whipped around anytime the airplane went out of control. And so since it would do that and do some interesting post-stall gyrations, what we would do is train the student pilots what happens when the airplane is going straight up or somewhere nose high and loses controlled flight.
Mm-hmm.
And to just let it go, like many airplanes, let it go and let it do its post-stall gyrations before you do anything. And so there were 3 vertical recoveries. The first one was on your belly, about 20 degrees, about 70 degrees nose high. Let it go to 0 airspeed and kind of just fall down like that. It's very mundane, very benign, very much like a normal stall on any airplane. The nose brake, AOA brakes, the nose falls through, and then you accelerate. Once you get flying speed, fly the airplane again. The second one was on your back at 110 degrees, and it would kind of fall on its back a little slower because the engines were trying to push the airplane and hang it up. But it didn't hang up like some other airplanes will, like the F-18 Hornet would hang up like that. The Tomcat won't hang up, but it kind of hangs and then falls out. Again, fairly benign. It might fall on its side. And so it's good. The one that got your attention all the time was the last one we did was straight up. Ooh. So 90 degrees nose high now, and you get it as parked as high as you can, and then the airplane starts to backslide. And because it's coming down this way, whichever direction it chooses, it's a good whip. And it generally is on your face, and it pushes you up into the canopy, and then it whips around and it bangs your head against the canopy, and it's like, whoa, okay, and just like a carnival ride, it's like, okay, and you sit there and you just don't touch anything. And in fact, what I would tell Rios when I was fighting, when Rios in the back seat, I would tell him to ask me to show me your hands, so anytime we went out of control, hey, show me your hands, and feet on the deck, roger that, here's my hand, not touching anything. And so and it would be pretty violent. Then once it got itself under control, now you could go flying. Okay, so me and a guy named Sam Richardson, his call sign Slammer, student pilot, we're going to go out and do this hop in August of 1987. Absolutely spectacular day, gorgeous day. Southern California, no June gloom, no undercast. It was beautiful. And so we went out and took off, and we went out and did this hop, and we did all the maneuvers, and we're coming back, and we're just about 70 miles to the southwest of San Clemente Island. So we're about 90 miles from Naval Air Station North Island and about 120 miles from Miramar. So we're about that far off the coast. Beautiful Pacific blue day. Can see the island 70 miles up north there, and we're just in our own airspace out there. And so we had 6,000 pounds of gas left after completing all the maneuvers, demonstrating to Sam what we were doing. And I said, we have 6,600 pounds of gas, heading back to do, swap seats. Is there anything else you want to see me demonstrate? He says, yeah, I want you to show me the vertical recovery again. In the brief, I had told Sam that in VF-51, my first squadron, I had used the vertical maneuver, and right as you're getting to 0 airspeed, passing 100 knots, you actually shove the stick forward and the airplane would translate like that. And then as it starts to come down, you just grab a handful of stick and the airplane was, and so you could go up with not enough airspeed to go completely over top. By the way, I forgot to explain to everybody, these happen because you go up with not enough airspeed to do a full loop and the airplane hangs up. So typically in a Tomcat A, at the right airspeed, and we would teach them how to do loops. It's not just a loop, but an extension. You go up with about 300 knots, 320 knots as you could go up. Anything less than that, and you're probably going to hang the airplane somehow in the vertical. And of course, you stop, and the bandit comes up, behind you, and now you're dead because you run out of energy. And so you want to be able to do that loop. And so we would teach people to do that loop at the optimum place. But if they end up, because they're looking over your shoulder, you're never looking at your instruments. You can glance in, look back out. With a HUD, and now with a helmet, with a joint helmet mounted cueing system, it's right in your face. So you don't have that same thing anymore. But in the Tomcat A, with not a lot of HUD, you'd look down, you'd look real quick at the airspeed and go, yeah, I got. And then you're back, and I'll do this for the camera. You're back over your shoulder, fighting this way, and you got to feel those cues in your body to take the airplane up, right? And so we would train them as that you take the airplane up, and if you go, oh, okay, now it's time. Hey, knock it off, ballistic flight, and then let everything go and recover, and then you go fight. Well, I had told Slammer in the brief that when I learned to do this maneuver from my instructor 3 years before this time, he taught me that you can do this in the Tomcat, and I used it in VF-51, and he demonstrated to me, and I did it in my flip-flop hop as a student in 1984. early 84, I did this with success. And so I was telling the slammer, there is actually a tactical application of this to go like that. And when we did the vertical maneuver in the first time when I first demonstrated, I couldn't make it do that. I kept pushing the controls, then I let it go. We flopped around and we left, And so, all right, well, couldn't do it. But anyway, that's what you can do. You can practice. Mm-hmm. And he says, hey, I want you to show me this thing again where you flip it on its belly. I went, oh, okay, lock your harness, up we go. So up we go in this one here. So again, fateful question. Would you like to see anything else? Yes, I'd like you to do this. That's the maneuver we ejected out of. So we go up, straight. And this time I am absolutely perfectly bullseyed. And so straight up, and the airspeed's coming off. We're at full military power, not afterburner. And we started at 15,000 feet level, locked our harnesses, and we topped out at 26,000 feet. And so the airplane slows to a stop. Get a little bit of blue smoke in the cockpit because the environmental control system, has a little oil in it, and so the turbine will smoke a little oil. You get that in there, you can smell it. The environmental control system kind of slows down, so the sound of air rushing slows down. And then the only way you can actually tell you're backsliding is the little yaw string on the front of the Tomcat, the little 69-cent piece of string. Just it's sitting there, and you can look up at the nose looking at it, and it flips around, and now it's going backwards. And so I told Slammer, hey, yaw strings flip, so we're coming down backwards, and we're just starting our backslide, and the airplane is perfectly, in fact, it's pivoting just a little bit with the torque of the engines, and it's sliding straight back down. We're at full military power. Left engine stalls right next to my ear, and it's this huge bang and a yellow fireball. It just goes boom! Big yellow fireball goes right out past the canopy. It's like, oh, holy shit, So, that gets your attention.
Oh, cool.
And so now we're kind of just coming off like that big yellow fireball. Well, the procedure for engine stall is both throttles to idle. And so I pulled both throttles to idle. All of the aviator people listening to this podcast and go, oh, wait a second. You're transitioning the throttles with no wind or no airflow over the right intake. Guess what? Boom! Right engine stalls. Big yellow fireball past the right side. And so, the little comedian inside my body is like, ah, and then it's, like that. and so now I got both throttles to idle, and the stall tones in the Tomcat were like doo 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 with yellow lights flashing. So you get that. The master caution's going off. All of the red lights are lighting up, and the cautions are lighting up with the loss of two engines. And so. Hydraulic pressure is coming off to its basic level, and the engines are over temping, and the temperature is going up. So everything is like, what do you do here? I can't do anything because the airplane is still out of control. And so initially, okay, let go of everything. And now because we had slid straight back down and we've got this perfect rate coming on, and then one engine at full power for just a little bit before the other engine stalled too. Now we're coming off straight down on our back. Whoa. So it just goes boom, and it's a huge thing all the way back up into the vertical and commences this sort of weird, sort of nose high to nose low on your back, sort of inverted, sort of to the left, weird gyration, right? And so logical brain says we're still in post-stall gyration. Illogical brain says both engines are stalled. You need to get this airplane under control so we don't have to eject. And so in a situation like this, two things happen. So first, you fall to the level of your training, and I'll explain that in a second. And second, time completely expands, and seconds seem like hours. And so as I scan my instruments, I should have been staring at them for a long time, like the turn needle. And I probably glanced and went somewhere else, and it keyed me in my brain. The turn needle is pegged left when it was probably still going like this. Had I just sat there and stared at it, the turn needle probably would have been flipping back and forth. When I looked at it, it was left, which validated the fact that we were going left, and I started to convince myself that we were in a spin. Slammer in the back, when he feels us come off, he thinks we are starting to enter a flat spin. And so what you always want to do in a Tomcat is stay away from the regimes at which you enter a flat spin. Logical brain should have said you weren't in a regime to enter a flat spin. Illogical brain says it feels like we're in a flat spin, so, and then the sense of urgency to recover the airplane takes over, after about the third time, the airplane comes down, it comes back up, it comes down, it comes back up, because I'm losing altitude at a huge rate. Every time the airplane drops out of the vertical, the altimeter goes zzz, and then it comes back up, slows down, still going down. Zzz, so we are rocketing down through, 15,000 feet easily, 20,000, 15,000, going down. So mandatory ejection altitude is 10,000 feet. And so I fell to the level of my training. The most recent training, and I was, coincidentally, the high altitude subject matter expert, high angle of attack subject matter expert, high AOA subject matter expert in the training squadron, and I would teach it. I was the instructor that taught that. I'm in a high AOA situation, and so you would think that I would be the one to go, oh, I know
the best man for it.
Cover this airplane and fly home, right? And the last thing I looked at was a videotape test pilot demonstrating how to get out of the incipient phase of a flat spin very, very quickly, stop the yaw rate by application of counter cross controls. Immediately stick aft and do that. And so he showed this thing, and of course it's being conducted at like 45,000 feet, because to get out of a flat spin, if you can't, takes a lot of altitude. So there was a very compelling tape that I had just reviewed that showed that if you do this cross control thing, it stops the yaw rate. Then you let go, and now you're nose down instead of building yaw rate. That's the last thing in my head. And so I see that. I see the turn needle peg to the left, and I go, we got an impending, flat spin here. I need to get out of this. This thing's not coming out. I need to get out of this so I can start the engines, because altimeter has now gone through about 12,000 feet, and we're going to get to eject altitude, and I don't have this airplane under control. And if I don't help it, we're not going to get under control. And so Nasty helps the airplane. And so I grabbed full left and aft stick, so full into and aft, and full right rudder opposite what I thought was a left hand spin. And what was in my head was to break the yaw rate. So I jammed that thing in, and the airplane just settles out. All the violence stops, and it kind of enters this sort of shuddering spin kind of a phase. In retrospect now, looking back on it and knowing all that I know, what I did was I actually kept it into a left-hand spin. And your listeners are going to go, well, you idiot, Nasty, you kept it. But your brain's the size of a pea. All the lights are going off. It's violent. So Sam is acting like a Rio in there. He's got himself in position. He's reading out altitude, but he's not asking me, what's your airspeed? What's your angle of attack? Take a look. And usually when you're flying with your Rio and you're in an out of control situation, they will quiz you on what's going on. And they will get you to look and then respond. So it targets your attention. And there's a lot of patience to be had in airplanes like this. The first step in an F-4 Phantom, there's one right over your left shoulder there. The first step in out of control is to wind the clock. It's to just chill, let the airplane do what it's doing. Well, I didn't do that. It was time for me to recover the airplane so I could start at least one engine and, take it around the horn, turn it off, and turn it back on. Now, they'd been over-temping for quite a while, so even getting them to restart later would be a challenge. And so, anyway, I'm putting controls in, and we go down through 10,000 feet. And Slammer says, 10,000 feet. Have you got it? Which is the question for, is it time to eject? And I said, nothing. Didn't even answer him.
Oh, really?
Nope. Didn't even answer him. So now we go down through 8,000 feet. So less than a turn later, we're now 2,000 feet lower, 2,000 feet below mandatory ejection altitude, which is fairly concerning. And I don't have control of the airplane. He says, 8,000 feet. Have you got it? And I just went, I don't have it, in my head. And then, nope, eject. And so just like that. And so as I said, the eject the third time, I reached up to pull the upper face curtain on a Tomcat. Now, on the Barton Baker seat of a Tomcat, there's an upper face curtain, two big yellow and black beaded handles up here over your helmet. And when you put your head back into the seat, you can do that. And when I was training in the Tomcat, training for ejection in the Tomcat, I always wanted to reach for the upper handle because I want to get my body in that position gained by pulling down the face curtain here. The other face curtain is down between your legs, and it's a single loop and comes up, and I always had to work very hard to, once I put my hands around that handle in the para-rigger shot, to then sit back, put my shoulders back, put my head up, and without looking at that handle, pull. And you pull like this, but I was always afraid I was going to get the wrong body, body position. In the newer airplanes now, there is not an upper handle, and so you have to train for that lower handle. But I was going to reach for the upper handle. So as I pull the upper ejection handle down, and the loops are right here. Now I'm looking through the loops like this, and I pull it down. I can see the canopy bow, the edge of the canopy, of course, right in front of me, and the canopy goes off. Now in the Tomcat, the ejection sequence is 0.9 seconds, 9/10 of a second. Canopy goes, back seat goes, front seat goes.
Wow.
And you are under, both aircrew are under full chutes in 9/10 of a second. So this is less than a second. But as I'm looking through the handles, the canopy looks like it's 8 feet away from me, and it goes boom like that, with this brown smoke as the explosive cords blow the canopy off. I mean, no kidding, just like boom. And then I pull I watch it go off, and then I pull the handle down, and it's on my chest for a countable time. And I'm sitting there going, is this going to work? And then ow, 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 and out I go. And the small of my back hurt really bad. I instantly think that when you have a lot of adrenaline and stuff, you don't hurt until later. And I know I hurt, and I'm like, oh no, I broke my back, all in the space of less than half a second.
Wow.
And then there's these three like Polaroid shots, like bang, bang, bang. The first one is the side of the airplane going away to the left, and it's big 455 is the side number. I see that snapshot. Then I see my feet with the boots with the lanyards that pull your feet in from the chair ejection seat, so your toes don't hit the instrument panel on the way out. So kind of like that, and then a brilliant flash of orange, which is one of the panels of my chute opening, and then bam, and now I'm in the chute.
Wow.
It is so quiet, and it's beautiful outside, and such a relief from being in do-do-do-do-do-do-do-do. What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And now I'm just floating down a parachute going, wow. And of course I said what any human being would say. The first word out of your mouth is F-bomb. It's like, ha! And you're kind of sitting there, and I had the face curtain in my hand because I had pulled it, and it goes with you, and I dropped it. I'm like, oh, no, I want that thing. And I'm watching it kind of fly down and stuff. So I was in a kind of a weird state of mind right then.
Wow.
And I look over at Sam, and I see him. He's over there a couple hundred yards away, and he looks like he's dead. He looks just like Goose out of the movie, just like him. And his head's hanging down, his arms are hanging down, and he's floating down in his chute. And I go, oh man, I killed him. And it was kind of a passing thought. Kind of looked at him, and now I was like, oh man, And then I look over again, and he's looks just like somebody out of a parachute movie. He's got his arms up, and he's looking good. He's in perfect body position. His raft is deployed below him, and he becomes like this example for me. So I look over at him, and instantly the thought of him dead goes away. It just drops out. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at him and go, oh, I need to do my stuff too. Yeah, good idea. So I first thing I do is I know I'm floating down, and again, it's very quiet outside. Blue day, totally blue, pick a descriptive word. Azure day, navy blue day, whatever. It's gorgeous outside. Pacific's rolling a little bit, pretty smooth, sunny outside and stuff. So it's pretty nice. And so I'm floating down with enough time to do things. And so I go, okay, I need to inflate my life preserver. And so I grab the beaded handles down by your waist, and I pull those things, and bang, this thing goes up like a rock. And I can't see anything but my chute. I have the thing stuck up like this. And in the swimming pool, when we train, you get to release one of them with CO2, and the other one you have to blow up. And so because they're joined, one CO2 cartridge, they're kind of sort of fills up some of them, and then you got to blow the other one up and practice using the oral tube. So it's not very hard. It does float, but it's not that great. Oh no, right. In the air, they are like rocks. And I am now got my chin parked up here, can't do anything. So I let go of my oxygen mask, let go of the bayonet fitting to the oxygen mask, makes my helmet rotate off the back of my head. I pull my chin down and go, okay, I can see. Now I'm bareheaded, just kind of, floating down. The helmet's gone somewhere. I realize it's still connected to my comm cord later on when I got in the water. But it's over there. And now I go, okay, now I snap the waist lobes together. So now I'm in this, Michelin man sort of okay, this thing's going to float. All right, next thing I got to do, let my raft go. And so, all right, I'm going to let my raft go. And so I reach around for the handle at the raft go. And they teach you that in some seat pants in the back, some seat pants in the side, you never really practice this because there's no way to be anywhere to let the raft go when you're that high. And the lanyard is fairly long. So I'd never experienced what it felt like to, pull the handle off. But I pulled the handle right off. And it was, now I got it in my hand. Well, did it work? I don't feel anything. I can't tell. I don't know what it looks like really. And so I become obsessed with knowing whether my raft is deployed.
Right.
And so I'm going, I need to get my raft because there's sharks down there, great whites, they breed off of San Clemente. So that enters my head. So now I have sharks and I have to get in my raft and not have my little feet dangling down there in my my stuff, right? And so I become obsessed. I can't see the raft because I can't get around the lobes that are around my neck and around the waist, so I can't see it. So again, in my fairly shocked state here, I start yelling at Sam because I want Sam to tell me if my raft is out. And so because I don't have a helmet on, I'm just screaming as loud as I can. I'm yelling, Sam! Sam! And in order to get him to tell me what I want to do is have a conversation with him. Is my raft out? Yes, it is, Nasty. You're fine. Okay, good. So that's what I'm trying to get, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm yelling at him. Well, he finally hears something and looks over at me, and he's about 100 yards away. We're floating down in our chutes, and so I'm going to turn towards him so I can yell at him. Well, he decides to do the same thing as me. Well, both of us had let go of our 4-line release, which in a conical parachute is a feature that you pull these little toggles on the back risers and you pull them down. And they release 4 panels in the back of the chute, and it stops oscillation.
All right.
Dumping air. It also gives you a little bit of forward motion, so you can kind of control yourself a little bit. It's not like a wing. You're not doing all this kind of things. It just moves you forward. Well, it gives you a little forward motion, about walking speed. So now Sam and I are now going towards each other.
Oh, no.
And it becomes very apparent that we're going to hit. And it's like, whoa, 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 whoa. And we went by each other like he was right there. We went by each other. The canopies must have touched. And it was like hilarious, like, whoa, we're not going to do that again.
Yeah.
I don't know. Can you imagine the 2 aircrew died because they ejected, hit each other in the chutes. How they do that? Got tangled up and then fell to the water and both died. I mean, the story would have been amazingly funny. And so, all right, we'll stay away. I look down. The next thing I do, so now everything's out. All right, I'm good. All right, now I got to worry about getting in the water. So, and by the way, this story is in my book. I forget which chapter it is, but Learn How to Lead to Win. And so it describes all this stuff in there too. But it's fun to talk to you about it because it's a great story to tell.
Great.
So anyway, we get down. Now I'm going to go into the water, right? And so I'm looking, and as I look down, I see this big frothy area of water right below me, and I go, oh man, that's Bishop's Rock. That's a reef, and we're gonna, that thing right there there's sharks on that reef. I need to get away from that reef, right? And so I look down there and I go, I steer away from there, and I do. I get away from the frothy area pretty good, and my feet touch the water. Boom! Let go of the Coke fittings for the parachute. That goes down, I bloop, and then come back in the water. And again, it's gorgeous. And there's my raft right in front of me on the lanyard. And so I pull the lanyard in, I pull the raft in. I have a little bit of a kind of a fun time trying to figure out how to snap the raft to me. I kind of find it. It says, when you flip it around on one side, it says attach here. Take that. Oh, okay. And we had practiced sort of this stuff, some in the pool, but that's the level of training I didn't fall to. I was in a mode of discovery on a regular basis during this ejection sequence, right? And so I get in the water, and you do this little gymnastic maneuver. You shove the back of the one-man raft down, and you flip over and sit on your butt. Okay. And so you flip it in and then turn, and a lot of people can't do it, so and so I flip around and get in there and start talking on my radio. Well, it turns out that an E-2 Hawkeye coming back from an exercise, supporting an exercise, and Sam and I actually jumped out right in the middle of a naval exercise with 6 ships, 8 helicopters, the E-2, The E-2's flying, sees us do our maneuver. Hey, look, an air show, and then watches us eject. Holy crap, an ejection, so they become the on-scene commander. And so I hear this over the top, and an E-2 goes over. So I'm talking to the E-2. First report comes back from the E-2 to the beach that says that one guy's in fair condition or good condition. That's me. I'm sitting up in my raft. I'm talking on a radio. The other guy's in fair condition because they see him laid out on his raft, on his belly. Well, Slammer didn't do the flip and get up on the raft like that. He's a surfer, so he's laying in his raft and he's paddling like a surfer. And he's going, Nasty, he's yelling at me. He's going, holy shit, that was awesome. Wow, that was so cool. His big grin on his face. He's all wet. He's swimming over like that. I started paddling towards him like, oh, sharks. I'll let them bite him. So I put my arms in, my feet in. I'll let them nibble on him, And so he comes over. And we tie each other up kind of, opposite like that in our rafts. And we connect to each other, and we're going up and down these swells. We get up on top of the swell, and there's this huge freaking sea monster, like right there. Has a big nose, a fin, long back, another fin, and then we go down in the trough. I'm like, whoa. And look at that. We come back up in the trough again. Mike, it was the airplane.
Oh, was it really?
That frothy area of the water was when the airplane pancaked in. Because it was flat, boom, and the reserve buoyancy put it back on the surface. And so what I avoided was the splash from the airplane hitting the water. I didn't see it hit, but I just avoided the splash of it.
Wow.
And it sat on there for a couple of minutes, and then it sank out of sight. And so that was the airplane that I saw without the canopy on it that looked like a fin and then a big, dorsal fin. Not until we got up did I see, oh, wait, that's a VF-124 tail.
That's a Tomcat.
That's a Tomcat. And so then about, 5 minutes later, 2 helicopters showed up. I mean, it was like that. And one of them picked up Sam and one of them picked up me, and we flew back to North Island. And I must have peed for 30 minutes, with all the stuff. And so two postscripts for this thing. First of all, neither of us were injured. We kind of jumped out with I had bruises. Actually, I have a pen bruise on my arm from the pen that was in my flight suit. Bruises on the back of my calves. Neck hurt a little bit, from getting out, but pretty much, able to walk around and go from there. So we were good. I knew Sam and his wife, Beth, for a long time before this. She wouldn't talk to me for a decade. She thought I tried to kill her husband. She wouldn't talk to me for a decade, hated me. And finally, about 10 years later, she gave me a big hug and said, I forgive you now, for almost killing my husband. I mean, no kidding. So, yeah. So then post-ejection in the Navy, they have three investigations. The first one is a safety investigation where they determine, what really happened here. So can we prevent this in the future? The second one is a legal investigation that determines, you read your rights. Did you do this on purpose? Is there anything we can charge you with? And the third one is the scariest one, which is to determine whether you can fly again. It's called a Field Naval Aviator Evaluation Board, a FNAB. And that's the scariest one because these 3 senior aviators are determining whether you're allowed to fly that Tomcat again. And so they're also all different from the rules of evidence. So the safety, and they're all separate, and they have different people. So the safety investigation, I could have done this on purpose. I could have, ejected on purpose, done this on purpose. And I would tell the safety investigators, I did it on purpose. And they go, okay, you did it on purpose. And so there's no safety problem here. Just don't do it on purpose kind of thing. The legal investigation, oh, you did it on purpose. We're going to send you to jail. And then the FNAB would say, you did it on purpose. You're an idiot. You can't fly again. So they're all separate. But of course, as an honorable man, and everybody I know is like this, you tell the investigators all the same stuff, right? Because, I was in the situation. This is what happened. This is what I saw. This is what I heard. This is why I reacted. It's the training I had. These are the problems I had, and so everybody can kind of make the determination. I also was going to be honest with my actual actions. All 3 investigations cleared me. It was really funny. There was a question of honor and integrity on the Field Naval Aviator Evaluation Board, the FNAB. One of the members came up to me and he said, hey, Nasty, thanks. You told us the truth. And I was looking at him like, well, of course I told you the truth. Mm-hmm. He goes, because Slammer didn't look at the wings, you could have told us that it was a spoiler stuck up and you couldn't get under control, something, that kept you out of control, instead of saying what you did. And we would have completely exonerated you from this, because they did find it was, even though the engine stalled, they found it to be pilot error because I put the controls in. Mm-hmm. And there were other things they did. They took the vertical recovery out for a while because people were experiencing engine stalls, although no one had experienced a double engine stall without, coming out of it. And they took the training tape out of circulation because I told them what I had learned with that. So they did some things, but it was still pilot error, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it goes on my record as pilot error. I had a year probation that nothing else could happen, which is kind of weird. Okay, eject again, they send you home, So I got done about 5 weeks later. And my first flight, I went out with a Rio, and we took off out of Miramar, went east over the land, and I did a vertical recovery. It was the only maneuver to get that hot rock out of my gut. I said, okay, we're going to go out on the Cane Moa. Lock your harness up, we go. Oh my God, I was terrified. I sat there. As soon as the airplane reached 100 knots, I did everything perfectly right. I put my hands right here. I put my feet on the deck, and I just waited for the airplane to do everything it was going to do. Thankfully, the engines didn't stall, neither of them. They stayed lit both times. And the airplane comes down, does its thing. We leveled out, and we flew right home with an entire bag of gas. I said, we're not doing anything else.
I bet your heart was going.
Oh yeah, it was. It was the very personification of getting back on the horse. And I was like, doo, and nothing happened. Boy, I was the happiest man alive. Flew back into there, everything by the numbers. Usually I go into the brake fairly hot. Nope, this was a 325 knot brake. Broke, just landed as nicely as I could. I just don't want to screw anything up on my first flight back from being grounded for 5 weeks and taxied in. So yeah, and then the other postscript, I worked as hard as I could to be, and now with that failure, I worked as hard as I could to be the best instructor I could, and I actually got the 1988 Instructor of the Year award.
Nice.
For all post stuff. So the lesson is, you recover from that failure, you put it in context, you get the hot rock out of your gut, you're not afraid to get back on the horse, and then you work hard to, reestablish. And so that's kind of the whole story.
I mean, what a brilliant story there, Nasty. But I have to ask you one question before we wrap up this first episode of Eject. Did you get any memorabilia from the jet, or did you keep your helmet from anything like that?
Well, I had the helmet for a long time because what they do is they'll keep the shell. You can probably see one of them out there somewhere. They'll keep the shell and then rebuild your helmet.
Right.
But I think maybe that VF1 helmet right up there might be a shell from that. But no, I didn't, and that's why letting go of the face curtain was the first oh no, because there it is. But no, it's just in my logbook, Mike. Is one takeoff that didn't have a landing to equal it.
Exactly. But Nasty, thank you very much for coming on the show again. But where can we find you online and your book again, just to remind our viewers?
Hey, thanks, Mike. The book's called Learn How to Lead to Win. 33 powerful stories of my flying in the U.S. Navy, driving ships, and then leadership lessons attached to it. It's on Amazon. There is a lot of content on www.mikemanazir.com. and a lot more leadership stuff and other great stories and images and things like that from my career.
Brilliant stuff. And we'll link all that in the description below for you guys. But again, Nasty, thank you very much for sharing that story.
Thanks, Mike. It's a fun one, and I'm glad to be here to share it with you.
Cheers.